The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. Keep your mission on your mind and your mind on your mission. This is Mission Minded with Michael Coleman.
Keep your mind on your mission on your mind. We do it every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Central Time right here on Tony Kurre Radio on TKR. And thanks again to thousands of folks who have downloaded the TKR app. Of course, you can also go back and check us out on our Tony Kurre Radio podcast. And I believe coming up next week, I think it'll be our 50th episode already of Mission Minded. Isn't it hard to believe, Michael Coleman?
Yeah,
How about
really
that?
is.
It's we've gotten some great mileage out of a lot of different things. And, of course, email is always welcome, info@TonyKurreRadio.net, info@TonyKurreRadio.net. You bringing up a really good topic, though, today. And while it's not a medical diagnosis, a lot of people in the workforce would disagree with you, but we're talking about burnout. How do we get it? What do we consider it? And how do we get rid of it? It sounds like one of those things, and I'll open it up right off the bat. It sounds like one of those things that once you get burnout, it's kind of hard to get rid of. And it may be somewhat of a predetermined thing for a lot of people, because I think when you have personal issues going on, certainly that can expedite a burnout at the workplace. But when you think about burnout, what do you think of?
Well, I think,
besides you.
Yeah, besides me. Well, when you look at somebody who is burnout, and I've gone into several different organizations, and you almost always find a certain amount of your workforce when you're going into a new organization is burnout. And there's just a million different factors that go into it, but it's usually not hard to detect if you interact with them a little bit, which is they're just void of on the inside. I mean, you'll see sometimes where it manifests itself where they're just glassy-eyed. They're like come in and they do routine things and they are not up for change. And it's just like they don't have any bandwidth in their mind to think about doing something new. Just think about if somebody's been doing something 20 years, they're getting close to retirement, and you come in and talk about wanting to redo the whole program and all that. Mm-hmm. They're just like, I'm not interested in learning anything. I just want to do my time and get out of here. I'm not looking for any innovation. I'm not looking for, and just kind of shut down that. And I've encountered that. I've encountered others who simply just don't know how to recognize boundaries. And so they can't work 20 years in one place because they keep going until they have nothing left in their tank because they don't recognize boundaries. They don't take the time to fill their tank back up. So their tank is constantly pouring out and there's nothing there to refill it. And that's equally as dangerous, just on the opposite extreme. But the real challenge for me has been in taking someone who's a valuable employee and trying to determine, are they at the end of their capacity because they're burnout, or is it a possibility of reviving them? And I've been reading about this lately, about the whole burnout factor. And I've actually had a little bit of success. I haven't been wildly successful, but a little bit of success in rejuvenating some people who were, who I thought perhaps were too far gone.
Yeah, Michael Coleman here with Mission Minded, a great show. We play every single Monday through Friday at 10 o'clock Central Time, wherever you get your podcast, the Tony Kurre Radio Podcast. It seems to me that if you burn yourself out as a role player in a business, there's obviously a couple things you can play this with. It's a personal situation. Maybe you're not getting enough sleep. Maybe you're one of these 60 to 80 hour people that's just putting in so much work because there's so many things to be done. Obviously, the boss has to do with it. But it would seem to me that one of the ways to stop burnout, and of course, a lot of people say you need a vacation. Well, you take a vacation, it's the boiling pot to me. If your pot is boiling over and you take a vacation, the minute you go back to work, what's happening? It's going to boil over again. I would think, and you're the boss here, I would think that one of the ways to stop burnout is to change their role in some capacity. If you find out what burns them out and maybe give it to somebody else, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, so part of it is getting people to admit that they're struggling. So what I've tried to do is, because we go into this going, we think, okay, I'm going to show them what a superstar I am. So I'm going to take every task they throw at me, and I'm not, and to say enough is enough just creates, just makes people think that I'm weak or I'm not a team player or that I'm being difficult. I explained it to some people recently here at the food bank. I said, listen, when I get a new person in, I can't see your tank. I can't see who you are on the inside. So I start off by giving you a task, and not just a task, but a project. Because I want to see, especially at the manager level, I want to be able to see what kind of decision making, what kind of initiative they have, all those kind of things. What I can't tell is, am I maxing them out by that one project, or can they take on 10? Now, I'm not interested in overutilizing them. So I sit down with them and say, listen, I'm going to start giving you these projects. And as you're doing them, I'm going to say, okay, they handled that well with very little coaching. I'm going to give you more. I said, now I'm trusting for you to come back to me and say, my tank is getting full. In other words, you're getting to the point where you're overwhelming me. I said, I won't know that unless you communicate that. And so you have to build that culture that encourages employees to say, hey, enough is enough, because otherwise you can't tell on the individual when it is until you begin to see, you have employees that won't come tell you that, but you begin to see the manifestation of burnout, or where their stress levels, they don't have time to joke around or pleasantries. They're just so focused, and you can just tell they're tense, and they may be short with coworkers, and that's where you realize, no, they've got too much. And it goes back. One of the key things is just what you said is you got to decide what to do, and one of those is sit down and think through what their responsibilities are and figure out how can I remove some of that. Some of those responsibilities and put them in other areas where it makes sense, or either get that person some help, because you've got the responsibility as a head of an organization or to bring it up to the head of the organization. If you've got somebody that you've overwhelmed with tasks, you've got to do one of two things if you want to keep that employee long term. You've got to take something off of them, or you've got to get them some help. One of those two things.
Yeah. Michael Coleman joins us here on Mission Minded. We do it every single Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Really interesting burnout, because I think all of us at some point in our work lives have suffered some type of burnout, and it's how we deal with that. And normally we'll spend some more time with family. Maybe we go to 4-day work weeks. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes. And I think a lot of people thought that perhaps we would remedy burnout by working from home. And some people would say that's actually had a reverse effect. I think it's really interesting because when I think of the word burnout, I associate it with work ethic. When I hear a person's burned out, I'm thinking, man, that's the guy or that's the woman I want on my staff, the one that just will work till they burn out because they work so hard. But then you also have those people on your staff that aren't really performing at the highest level, and they're the ones that are always tired. You know, I always tell people, I don't want to hear you're tired. Go take a nap. You know what I mean? Get more sleep. Are you staying up till 1 o'clock in the morning on social media when you should be getting? Because we're all tired. You know, I mean, we all need medicine to go to sleep, and then we need medicine during the day to stay awake. So how do you decipher that difference between the person who really truly is burned out and maybe that person that's just looking for sympathy? That's just, you know, a glum crew. And I guess sometimes it takes some time on the job to actually see that as a boss, correct?
Yeah, but if you're in tune or seeking to get in tune with your employees, you know, and you're consistent, you know, you begin to see some things will manifest themselves maybe in different ways, but still can lead somebody who's experienced into recognizing it much earlier. And the question is, you know, I want to give everybody the benefit of the doubt and say, you want to do what's in the best interest of the person working for you. So then you have some tough decisions to make. I will tell you, when I've recognized it in people, I've had somebody that's just flying through, burning it up, doing great, but then is headed for a quick crash and burn while they're still asking me for more responsibilities. And, you know, they are completely ignorant or purposely ignoring any sort of boundaries or the need for boundaries. They believe that, hey, I can go this pace all the time and, you know, my body doesn't need rest. I can just maneuver through an organization. I don't have to recognize other departments and their people. And so, if I want something done, I just rush in and do it. So there's all sorts of ways you can ignore these boundaries. Here's one of the things that's very difficult that I have found is trying to decide what are the external factors away from the job that's contributing to burnout. So if I'm talking to an employee and I say, let's talk about your rest cycle, because maybe they're not getting too much work. I mean, for them during their work hours, I'm not overloading them, but they're performing as if they're burnout because they're not observing boundaries outside of work. So if you didn't know that, take the time to know what they were doing and understand their workload, then you might think, oh, well, maybe I'm just burning them out. Maybe I'm giving them too much at work. So there is that trying to encourage and educate people on proper sleep and how to navigate, boundaries on the outside, because you'll have people who leave work. I mean, there's a million country songs been written about it, that you come into work and you've got an hour and a half sleep and you're laying out during lunch in the back of your truck, trying to get a 30-minute nap in because, you got another 6 hours on the construction site. I mean, it's just impossible as a leader, because here's the deal. I know that ultimately I'm trying to take an organization to accomplish its goals, and I've got to have an effective workforce. So I have to be self-aware of how I am as a leader and how much I'm giving somebody versus what's a reasonable expectation, but also demanding that they are working at capacity. And I get you now, everybody's capacity is different. But so you don't want to have an unreasonable an expectation. So it could be that I have two people in line for the same thing, or that are both managers of different departments, but I just understand that they're different and their productivity levels are different depending on what it is I'm looking at. One may be great at paperwork, one may be good at personnel management. And then the vice versa is true. One's really slow with their paperwork, or one doesn't get along with their people. So that's just all a part of it. But you're trying to assess the whole workload and the whole responsibility, because as you're coaching them, as you're developing them, you want them to get better without overwhelming them. So you want to take them to where they are, and you want to, as we say, just be able to squeeze more juice. But you don't want to wring them out to where there's no juice left for themselves. No,
I mean, I think that could probably add to burnout when you see someone that, maybe younger, is not married, doesn't have kids, and he's just getting after it night and day, and you're asked to do the same job he is, and you just can't handle the workload because you have peripheral things going on in your life. Because
as I get older, you and I both know this. I have a wonderful employee who works for me, and she's 69 years old, and she is wonderful. But there's times where I've told her, I said, listen, she's here at 6 o'clock in the morning and doing what everybody, and has a high level position. But I told her, I said, listen, you're very valuable to this company, but don't try to keep up with 25-year-olds. Yep. There may be days where you got to leave early because, hey, this is all your body's going to stand for that day. And that's okay. Because I value her and I value what she brings to the table. And it would be crazy of me to try to ignore the challenges as we get older. We hurt more, I just posted a meme on Facebook just kind of joking around, I could fall off a tree when I was a kid, 15 feet out of a tree, land on my head, get up and go, it's just a scratch, but then I roll over in bed wrong and I wake up and my body's broken. I can't, so you just have to take all that into account. Because again, we've got to care, I've said this in a lot of different shows, talking about the need to care about your employees. And caring about them is knowing what their capacity is and not trying to push them beyond their boundaries, but also having a high expectation that whatever your fill rate is, I want to get you as close to fill so that I'm getting as much productivity as possible without tipping you over the edge.
Info at TonyCurryRadio.net. This is Mission Minded. You can hear it every Monday through Friday, first run shows at 10 o'clock in the morning Central Time. And, of course, wherever you get your podcast, Tony Curry Radio Podcast. We're on every major indice out there. You can find us wherever you get your podcast. He's Michael Coleman, formerly the Jimmy Hill Mission, now the CEO of the Montgomery Food Bank. They cover 35 counties in the wonderful state of Alabama. A couple of things that I know you've talked about, the 4-day work week, and I know that was something you were talking about installing there at the Jimmy Hill Mission. Not sure if that took and what that means, the Montgomery Food Bank. We'll talk about that in a second, but you do allow, and I think I'm correct here, certainly through COVID, perhaps some people to be working from home. And I think a lot of people thought that would help their burnout by working from home. But then I could see where working from home may actually add to their burnout because they don't have a separate place. They can't compartmentalize their work and their home life. How have you seen that change for people? Because sometimes you get more rest at work than you do at home.
Yeah, and I will tell you, now I'm just going to speak for myself. So I had a job years ago when I was doing some pastoring of a church, and it was a very small church, 100 people, and so I had an office out of my home, and I'm not somebody who works well in that environment. I have ADD, and just the least sound or the least noise distracts me. And I need so me being at home all the time, I was easily distracted, but I also I'm extroverted. So like I'll work here at the office for 30 minutes and I may get up and just walk down the hall and speak to an employee. So relationships come easy. Of course, I understand some of those are introverts and I'm bothering them and interfering with their work. So I try to be mindful and regulate myself. But it was not good for me to work from home. I didn't enjoy it. I need the external communication and the face-to-face and all that. That's healthy for me. And I think there's some of those who didn't like working from home. It wasn't a good fit. Now you can take an introvert who's like, you put me at home, you give me the task I need to do, and they're in heaven. They don't have to do the office as they view it, politics. They don't have to do the niceties. They can just get up and hammer out their work. And oh, by the way, if their 2-year-old is with them, they don't have to take them to daycare, and that saves them money. And so there's pros and cons across the board, but I've just not yet found a one-size-fits-all strategy that all at work or all at home where it's just perfect for everybody, because it really goes to the complexities of each human shaped on their experiences and just how they're wired, and just everybody's different. But that's what drives me in part to try to get to know them on a personal level, to understand what their goals and aspirations are, to understand where and how they work best. I may have just said this the last show, so forgive me if I'm repeating for myself, but I tell our folks all the time, I said, there's some people that can't stay in an organization, that you come in and they're just not willing to adapt. They're not willing to get on board. They're going to be a problem wherever you turn, and there's no repair of that relationship. Sometimes you just have to say goodbye to those people. But I said, our organization when I got here was full of round pegs and square pegs, and you need both of them. Mm-hmm. But where you run into your problem is when you got the square pegs and the round holes and round pegs and the square holes. So I am constantly tweaking. So I had somebody who was in a volunteer position who, that's a heavy extra. You're going to be dealing with people. You got to have a lot of patience. And they were very type A. And they just weren't in the right position. It wasn't that they weren't valuable to the organization, but they needed a job that required a level of rule following and, just everything's black and white. And so I wanted to put them in that kind of environment because that's how they're naturally wired. And so I didn't have to get rid of that person. I just put them in an area that they were better suited. And that also goes into not burning somebody out. If you put somebody in a sales position who's introverted, and it's painful to go out, they can do it, and some people have done it, but they typically don't thrive in it because that's not a natural setting.
There is no doubt. We got to come full circle here on the days of the week we work here. He's Michael Coleman, of course. He's the CEO of the Montgomery Food Bank, formerly the Jimmy Hill Mission. This is a show called Mission Minded. Great business show here. You go back and listen to all of our previous episodes at Tony Kurre Radio Podcast. All right, so before we had unions and everything, we used to work 6 days a week, maybe 7 days a week, 12, 13 hours a day. And then, of course, we got the EOC and we got everyone involved in unions and everything. Then it cut back to 5 days a week. We were still working 10, 12 hours a day. Then we went to a 40-hour work week. Now we're trying to cram those 40 hours into a 4-day work week. And I know this is something that you've done some research on and looked into. And that sounds better. I mean, to have a 3-day run where, I know that firefighters, sometimes they do 7 on, 7 off, 12 on, 12 off. Do you find that works? And sometimes cramming even more time into a day, sometimes I could see where that wouldn't work for some folks. What is your research towards you?
Again, it's some situations are better. Like you see that in nursing a lot, where they will work 4 12s one week and then they work 3 12s the next. So it works out to an 80-hour week, I think, if that is not off. And so sometimes that's just easier to schedule when you're on rotating schedules. And we were getting into some of that at my previous position. Here at Food Bank, we really don't have to worry about that too much because we're pretty much a Monday through Friday, from morning till late afternoon. But, I think regardless, you're always going to have people who struggle with, working from home, or let me say prefer, not struggle, but prefer to work from home. And it depends on the job. I'm somebody who says, look, if I have somebody working from home right now, and one of my executives, and she's doing that because she's a proven leader and she's self-motivated, and I know that I'm going to get the same amount of productivity out of her. But if I wasn't able to allow her to work from home, I never would have been able to hire her.
Yeah.
So what it boiled down for me was, okay, I could say, well, everybody here's got to work here, but then I'm like, okay, well, that eliminates that person. So what's more important, that policy or that I determine or having the best people in place? And in this particular case, I made the decision to put the best people in place. Assuming
that someone doesn't have 15, 20, 25 years of experience in a particular business and they're very good at what they do, I don't see too many employees. And again, not every boss is Michael Coleman. You're a very forgiving, compassionate kind of guy. Yeah. But I mean, I don't see too many employees that have been in the business for 3, 4, 5 years feeling comfortable enough, despite the fact they feel like they're being burned out. And maybe they really are. Maybe they're being overworked, going to their boss and saying, listen, I'm burned out because right now, and maybe they would because there are so many jobs available right now, but I think that starts drying up over the next few months as we get into the inflation recession aspects of our economy. But so assuming that people don't feel comfortable doing that because they don't want to be looked upon as the weak link, and I get that, what are some of the signs that you've seen with your employees at Montgomery Food Bank or wherever you worked, where you say you're the glossy-eyed or maybe they're kind of tired? What's something an employee can hear from you right now that perhaps they don't know they're on the way to being burned out, but they are? What should they be looking for? And how long should it last before they feel like, hey, listen, I need to pull it back a little bit?
Yeah, so I will tell you a couple of employees I've had just recently and again, these are people who are go-getters. I mean, they really work hard, and I appreciate how much they work, but I've noticed they started letting key emails slip through the crack. Mm-hmm. So, I would send them emails, and there wasn't the same follow-up. So a lot of the just not major responsibilities, but just the communication began, because when you get too many emails, then it's hard to prioritize, or sometimes you just end up deleting some to get them off. You're thinking they're not that important, and then the boss comes back and goes, "Hey, what did you I asked you to do X, Y, and Z," and they're like, "Oh, I don't remember that." And but so that's one sign. But another sign is just when I'm talking with them, I've had employees who get antsy. Almost like somebody who is, because they're sitting there thinking, "Oh, I've got so much to do. And he's talking to me, And I'm trying to talk to them in a way that's showing care for them and understanding, but also explaining to them what my expectations are. But their legs are twitching like they need a drug fix almost.
Yeah.
And it's because they can't even hardly sit still and listen to me, because all they can think about is the 4,000 things they have to do. And when you're to the point that you cannot sit down and take a breath and relax, then you're very likely on the other side of healthy boundaries. And, just for the good, the unhealthy boundaries have led to the quiet quitting, which we did a show on that. Now there's even the opposite, the quiet firing. I mean, there's a lot of things into that. But here's the thing you have to ask yourself: if you're the worker or you're the employer, if you're the worker and you recognize, hey, that's me. I'm starting to make a lot more mistakes than normal. I feel like I need a break. But when I get away take a couple of days off, all I do is think about what I've got, what work I've left behind, and what I got to do. And you've got to, just for your own peace of mind, is at least sit down and have that conversation with your supervisor or with the owner of your company or with your boss, just because, that's not a situation that's tenable. You can't keep on doing that. Something's going to come to a head, and you don't want to really botch up something because and employees will begin to resent an employer who they don't feel like cares about them.
Yeah.
If you're an employer, I really want to encourage you to take some time to think about your employees, have some honest conversations, create, I hate this term, safe space.
Yeah.
But it really is, you want your employees, because I just tell them up front, listen, I can't know where your limits are. So you have to communicate those to me. And so it's almost like I'm begging them to tell me, but they know. And I tell them, when you tell me enough's enough, then now I know, and then we can move forward, and I can make sure that I'm not pushing. I'm gonna keep putting stuff on you, but I'm not gonna push you beyond what your limit is. But we have to have open communication about that. And I get bosses get busy, like I get busy, and sometimes I don't pay the attention that I should. But we have to say, for the good of the company, for the good of the employees, we have to take time to care for them and speak truth into their life. The two people that I have recently had to put boundaries around, I've had to enforce them, is because they won't do it themselves. And that's not a character flaw. It's that they care about their job and they just believe they're Superman, yeah. And they can't get burnout. And I'm like, I'm telling you, I'm already seeing signs of it. You're already making little mistakes, and they're going to start getting, they're going to keep getting bigger and bigger and more. And it's because you've literally got too much to do. Yeah. And I have one that goes, I said, what do you think about me getting you an assistant? And they're like, no, I don't want an assistant. And I'm like, okay, well, here's your choice. We're going to have to take things away, or we're going to have to get you some help.
That's a great worker, by the way. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know too many people that wouldn't take an assistant. Hey, listen, we only got a couple minutes left, but I do want to ask you one more final question. Sure. Michael Coleman here, Mission Minded, and podcast at any time you want. I always think it's funny, and I'm one of these people that you need a vacation when you get back from your vacation. Depending on what you're dealing with during your vacation. But a lot of people have a hard time not taking work home with them, assuming that they're actually working in a brick and mortar and they're not working from home. What do you say to people that, listen, I would love, some of my best days are when I forget my cell phone at home. And I know there's nothing I can do about it. And golly, for a period of 12 hours, it freaks me out. But to know that I can't do any damn thing about it makes me feel really good. What are your thoughts on taking home your work?
Yeah, so I actually have, sometimes I think it's good, and here's why. The question is it too much? So I have an employee who says, I cannot be there till 8 o'clock because I have to take my kids to school. Now, the rest of the organization gets here at 6 o'clock in the morning, but a couple departments, couple employees come in later. Now they stay and they work and they're putting in the same amount of hours, but when you're paying you're paying a really good salary and you're paying a director, lots of times, you can't get your work done. And this person can't stay past 4:00. And I'm like, okay, well, you know what the expectations are. And if you can't get it done in 40 hours rather than stay late, I'm fine if you take stuff home. It's not that person has too much to do. Maybe people were distracting her during the day or needing work done. So the normal task she couldn't get to it. But she willingly does it. But I also monitor her to look for signs of burnout and to see if she's doing too much. On the other hand, where it's clear it can be a sign that you've given somebody too much as to where, they're just they don't go to lunch, they're eating at their desk and they go home with, a foot high stack of paperwork and you can tell they're working all night, every night. That's not tenable. It's that person's headed for a crash. Now, I think it's good sometimes is to when you really stretch people. So sometimes you may give them that may temporarily push them past their limits, but that's stretching them a little bit. That's growing them a little bit. But you can't cause them to have to live in that space because it's simply too much to do. So every once in a while, somebody takes some work home, and I'm like, okay, good. That's rather stay here. You're going to take it home. You want to have dinner with your wife and kids, and you want to have something. That's fine. I just don't want it to be a habit. I don't want it to be the norm.
Yeah.
So again, that's part of coaching. That's part of stretching them a little bit. Every once in a while is okay. But if somebody's taking work home every single night, either they're not being productive at work and they're having to take work home, which does happen, or you've got too much on them and they're headed for burnout.
Michael, fantastic show. Mission Minded, 10 o'clock Central Time every Monday through Friday here on the TKR app. And, of course, also wherever you get your podcast. And just pull up Tony Kurre Radio Podcast. You can check out all the previous episodes right here. Thank you so much. Until next week, brother. I appreciate you.
Yeah, I loved it. Thank you.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.